4-year rotation ending in lentils. Lentils is a terrible crop for crop competition. It's just never competitive, and there's not a lot of products you can use. They rely heavily on group 2s. We know kocha's been resistant to group 2s forever, and so we have wheat, and then canola, and then wheat, and then canola, or wheat, and then lentils. And when you get to that lentil year, this is how much kocha's in there. You're still spraying. You're spraying all the things you're supposed to spray in these years, but this looks really ugly. This is an 18-inch row and a really light seeding rate. That's about 20 seeds per square foot. If you double it up, you still got the same rotation, and you now got a 9-inch row, and you double that seeding rate, you have nicer looking crops in this first 3 years, and by the time you get to that lentil year, which is going to be kind of ugly anyways, no matter what you do, you just have a heck of a lot less kocha. And you have not done anything in these other 3 years different other than seeding rate and row spacing. So by the time you get here, you have less kocha to deal with. So basically you decrease the biomass by 80%, decrease the seed by 63%. If you can rotate into something like winter wheat, all they've done in this case is winter wheat instead of spring wheat. By the time you get to lentil, it is really nice and clean. And if you can throw in something like alfalfa meadow brome, like a short-term perennial crop, even better. Again, putting winter wheat in, just swapping out spring wheat for winter wheat, decreased your biomass by 64%. And again, you're not changing anything different in the spray tank. But putting alfalfa meadow brome in decreased your biomass by 99%, which was cool. And with that, I'm going to move into water hemp. I'm going to quickly go through some slides. You guys don't have it here, but I'm really worried it is going to get here. There has been 1 or 2 plants found in a field in Dauphin, but they've just been one-offs, and I'm not worried about it. The person that knows they're there and so is watching, I've come up and taken a look. Just 1 or 2 plants shows up every once in a while. It came in somehow. We don't know how it got here, and the farmer is very careful about not letting it spread. But that just goes to show you it can show up here randomly just because it can, because it's a pigweed in it. They do that. Very tiny black seeds. This is 70 seeds on this dime. There's almost 44,000 in that little container. It emerges basically all year long. This is a poor grad student project where he actually had to count water hemp every single Monday morning from June 1st all the way through to October 25th, and it just keeps coming. They would count it, spray it off, because Liberty still works on this population. They would spray it out, come back the next Monday, see what else came up, and it worked out to, some of these fields had about 8,000 water hemp seeds per square meter, which is about 800 per square foot. So if you look at one of these floor tiles, they're probably about a square foot. That's about 800 water hemp plants in there. That's as bad as it gets. You pretty much have no crop by then, just so you know. And it gets that bad very, very quickly. So you really have to watch this one. So basically it'll emerge all year. Basically after the herbicide burn down and no-till, the last cultivation and conventional tillage, it just doesn't stop. This is also a logarithmic scale. So that's 1, that's 10, that's 100. So we're talking 300-400 coming up every week. It's really scary. This is the progress in Manitoba 2019. Anything in red is where we have DNA confirmed water hemp. 2021, we skipped 2020 because there was nobody in this position. But I started in 2021. We started mapping. That's where we found this one up in Dauphin. We found another one the next year over here in Ellis Archie over by Binscarth. Just 1 plant. But you can see this is getting more and more red. And then this is 2023, and this is 2024, and I'm waiting on the 2025 maps, but there's a bit more red in here. So it just gets redder, and it's moving north, and it's moving west. I would be extremely careful of getting any equipment out of this area, even demo equipment from any of our manufacturers. I would be very, very careful with that, because they're tiny little seeds, and they just, they're in the equipment. One thing that it's easy enough to tell apart, they do very much look like all the other pigweeds, but they're not hairy. Red root pigweed is hairy and it feels rough. You have to look at it very carefully. You can't look from up here and go, oh yeah, that's a water hemp, that's a red root pigweed. Sometimes I can tell because I've seen so much of it, but it's very hard to tell. You have to pick it up, you look at the hairs. This one's very, very smooth. It feels like glass. It's just, whereas red root pigweed is hairy, but it's not prickly or sharp or anything. I think it feels like fine grit sandpaper, but it's not sharp feeling. It's just rough and bumpy. And so you can see that as well as you can feel that in your hands. There's water hemp again. Sometimes it's dark and shiny green, not always, but lots of times it is, and it's very, very smooth. And this is red root pigweed. It's just rough and hairy and kind of dull looking. But when you start seeing it in the field, it's pretty noticeable, and it doesn't look like red root pigweed anymore. That plant goes from about here to about there. It's huge. This is an old picture, but this is just a single plant found in the Carmen area in 2022. That's my old guide. Those tables in our boardroom in Carmen are 8 feet long, or 6 feet long, and so that's about an 8-foot tall weed with these really long, snaky seed heads, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of seeds in a plant this big. Hundreds of thousands. And this was a Roundup Ready soybean field that the guide only sprayed Roundup. It was back in 2022. That's pretty much all we were doing then anyways, was just Roundup and soybeans. And just had one plant, and it shows up like that. And if he hadn't done anything about that and had left that and it went through a combine, all that seed is spread. So when it's smaller, it kind of hides down here in the soybeans. It almost, if you look at it straight down, it almost looks like a poinsettia plant that can have longer, skinnier leaves. And so this one doesn't look as much like a red root pigweed as some of them do, but lots of them, they're different as night and day. Some of them are just different leaf shape, they're different colors, they're all green, but some are redder, some are duller, some are bright. Some have red stems, some don't have any red at all. Here's a few in here, so when it's small, it's hard to see, and if you pull this canopy back, there's just a carpet of tiny ones coming. And so this is what we start to see when it moves into a field. You got a plant right here on the edge. This one's noticeable, it's red, you can see that, and this is like the grass or the weeds right on the edge, just coming in from the ditch. Like, do not let that go through a combine, get rid of that. If you do nothing that goes through a combine, you just continue to farm like you normally do, within 3 years this field will be corner to corner water hemp. I'll show you what some of that looks like. This one's a little harder to see, but this one literally is on the edge. It's right here. And there's one here. This one's a bit redder, so you can see it. There's another one over there. Again, we're right on the edge of the field. This is where they start. They seem to move in anywhere where there's been water backing up on a field. Follow the water. These ditches had all flooded and come onto the field and leave, and then there's seed left behind. One of these fields, might have been this one, I can't remember, but there was a plugged run, and that plugged run was just absolute solid water hemp. So there was definitely more water hemp seed out here, but with that soybean crop it wasn't growing. But one of these fields, again, plugged runs. I'll show you what else that looks like. This is over by Austin, which is getting closer and closer to here all the time. This is right on the edge of the field. I'm betting that did go through the combine. There's a few more scattered back in here. But yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of seeds on that thing. And it had come in, there's a lot of flooding in that area in the previous couple of years, and all of these fields are starting to see water hemp show up on them. This one's really, really red looking. So again, sometimes they look a little different, and this one just kind of looks more like just a really big red root pigweed, but it's not hairy. Then we start to see messes like this in these wide row soybean fields, up and down these rows. That is all water hemp. And this is an Extend field that didn't get sprayed with Extend until second pass. That's me, so that would have been up to about here on me when it got sprayed. Dicamba did what dicamba is supposed to do, and it twisted it up and curled it up. That's called epinasty. You see all this, it's lovely. It didn't kill it. Probably slowed it down, and probably a lot less seed on there, but you can see what it's done. But you can also see there's a whole bunch of new ones coming too. So that was not a good year for that field. Anyways, this is actually an Enlist field. My pictures look a little skewed for some reason, but all of this mess in between, that is all water hemp. And that is a field near Austin where the farmer swore he'd never seen it before and didn't know how it got there. I don't know either, but there are thousands and thousands of plants in here, so it must have been there before because the seed is there. Anyways, Enlist, the 240 Coning did a great job, and it did. You can really see in here, it's twisted them up and curled them up. It took a little bit longer on the bigger ones, but it got all of those, which was great. But this was a carpet coming up in here, and it was all water hemp, and that guy swore he'd never seen that weed before in his life. So it can happen that fast, I'm just saying. It can look like this. This is soybeans, but the guy ended up mowing this out because it was just too much water hemp. This is water hemp again in the ditch. Normally I wouldn't worry about it in the ditch because our ditches are grassed, and this is not a weed that would just randomly start growing in a grass ditch. But all of these ditches had been coming off a big drain in southeastern Manitoba, and the ditches had all been cleaned out and the culverts reset, because you guys know how that works in the RM. You have to reset the culverts every once in a while. And so they've been doing a lot of ditch work. These ditches had been black, and they were now solid water hemp. And so they were actually, all of this was just contributing to the problem because this was all going to seed. So now in that area, we just got the RM goes in and they mow all those ditches edge to edge, not just on the roadside, but edge to edge. And at least once they'll mow and they'll spray. At least once, wherever this is. So even in wheat, we start to see it as the leaves die back and the canopy opens up and you get some nice sunlight down here on this black dirt. This is just the edge of the field where you drive in. That's red root pigweed, that's water hemp. It grows all year long. This is wheat, just a few plants poking up. They got through a wheat crop, and then this is, I never know what this is called, but that V shape where, you know, you swing around from the headlands, and before you're going side by side perfectly, before the GPS gets you going perfectly, you sometimes have these little triangles in here, and that's where all the water hemp is, because there's no crop competition. Later on, they cut and swath this, and they tried to burn some of the straw to get rid of the weed seeds. It doesn't work. I mean, it might kill a few, but burning doesn't get hot enough for long enough to kill the weeds. Weed seeds, and a lot of times those seeds have shaken out and they're right on the ground anyway, so it doesn't work. It might have got a few, but it certainly doesn't get them all. And so all of this is under the cutter bar, tons of seed on here still, and it all regrows. It'll regrow. And as little as 2 weeks, you can start to get water hemp growing. So field edges. Lots of weeds in here. They're starting to creep into the field. This is oats, and I know oats